we've got to ask the question when we hear students saying things like this. Crazy.
Step up, make these transitions to plant-based catering. You know, the way I see it, serving meat and dairy at a university is akin to serving cigarettes at a lung cancer conference.
So you're saying that...
This was an interview I did about the National Trust cafes going 50% vegan. And I've got to tell you, they are an absolute disgrace, the National Trust. They are putting people from their farms, planting trees and really decimating the Welsh countryside, the language and the people that live here. I've got no time for them. Land grabbing organisation that has no real ethos to the people.
It's estimated our overconsumption of meat costs the NHS £18 billion a year. So what the NHS is doing, it's a really important issue because 33% of our carbon emissions comes from the food production and 70% of that comes from meat, like the sheep and cows that Gwyn is talking about, Evan's talking about.
OK, Gareth?
Gareth's talking about.
Let me tell you something. The land behind me would not grow anything else except grass, OK? So I think you're talking rubbish, to be totally honest with you. And this grass and the Carneddau mountain range is 27,000 acres where these sheep graze over the summer. This place is surrounded by wildlife, some of the rarest flora and fauna you can have across Great Britain.
Gareth, that's not true.
The farmers here
Go on,
are working the land
hold on a minute, Gareth.
Sustainable.
Gareth, that's not true.
Hold on, Dominic says that isn't true.
Look,
Why,
the tragedy of sheep farming is that the sheep eat everything, and it doesn't allow the regeneration of our natural temperate rainforest. You're surrounded by rain. That should be a rainforest. And Wales, most of Wales is an ecological disaster. And what we need to do is to ensure that farmers like you get a good income by having biodiverse friendly farming and actually ecotourism. So what we need to move away from is the system where we have to pour huge amounts of taxpayer money into subsidising an industry to subsidise Welsh lamb going to French restaurants. That needs to end. What we need is good incomes for farmers and protect our wildlife and reduce our carbon emissions and be healthier.
You are living in Clouds Cuckoo Land. I'll tell you something. My family's been on this farm for 375 years, producing top quality protein, which is lamb and beef behind me. We've got some of the rarest flora and fauna on the mountain. We've got montane heath, we've got blanket bogs, we've got heather. You can come up and I will educate you. You have been told and spun a story that you don't understand because you're living in an ivory tower listening to some environmentalists that are trying to clear families from this land.
I come from a family of farmers,
I am doing something
Gareth.
by feeding people in a sustainable way.
My father grew up on a farm. My uncles own farms. I am from farming stock.
Donica, let me ask you this. So Gareth presumably knows his land better than you do and its biodiversity, but he's made a point there about lamb and beef farming. Presumably, with the use of vegan food, if we return back to the point about the National Trust, that a lot of that, particularly fake meat, is not necessarily better for you, is it? Because it's highly processed food. So surely it's actually better for human beings to eat what they're supposed to in lamb and beef and natural proteins, rather than trying to get their nutrition from artificially over-processed vegan food.
You're right. Over-processed food, whether it's meat or plant-based, is a problem. If you add a huge amount of salt and preservatives and sugar to food, it's bad for your health. But most plant-based food is not highly processed. We're talking about vegetables, we're talking about potatoes, we're talking about all those fruit and vegetables. Those are not highly processed. And actually, what we're talking about here with the National Trust is actually 50% of the menu will still be meat-based. We're not excluding meat eaters. What we need to do is reduce the amount of meat. And actually, the studies show that 50% of the British public are already moving towards reducing the amount of meat and dairy in their diets because they know it's good for their health and good for wildlife. And actually, that's where we need to be moving.
All right, you get the last word on this, Gareth.
Let me tell you something about the National Trust. They are putting pressure on family farms to grow trees, and they are taking livestock numbers, not only in their cafes, but on the farms as well. They're a disgrace, and they need to be taken up on this, because they are sending people out. They are sending people out of their houses and their farms,
national treasure,
so they
the National Trust.
can hit net zero. Absolute disgrace.
OK, there we go. Gareth Wyn-Jones, we've got to leave it there in beautiful Snowdonia, and Donnacha McCarthy in this less beautiful studio. Good to see you both this morning. Half of the menu vegan.